Welcome into a Monday edition of the RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Pod. Nick Whalen, Alex Barutha here with you every Monday afternoon. Alex, a lot to get to. We got injury news. We got player news to talk about, some early impressions post-trade deadline. We saw most guys who were on the move on Thursday play at least one game with their new team over the weekend. We'll talk about the unique schedule this week as well ahead of the All-Star break, unique schedule next week. Really two kind of abbreviated weeks in a row. But if you're playing in weekly leagues, some things you need to be aware of, like OKC, for example, has just one game this week. A couple of teams have 3 games. We're sending out our prayers to those teams that have to play on Thursday this week for some reason. I never really understand like what determines which teams get the short end of the stick there. First and foremost, Alex, did you bet on the Super Bowl? What did you do for the Super Bowl? Did you stay up through overtime? How did it all go for you?
Yeah, I just watched it at home. No Super Bowl parties for me. Didn't place any bets down. I actually listened to your podcast with, I think it was the Bookies guys and John, about your like prop bet battle. How did you make out on those?
Well, we lost the battle. I'd like to say we won the war, but
Right.
we definitely lost the battle. Something like that. It's supposed to be a little bit lighthearted. It's like it's not like these were like the 10 best bets you could possibly make. We wanted to do a good mix of stuff like, we put 2 separate Gatorade color bets in. Neither of those hit. And nothing against John McKechnie. He did the work on that. The Gatorade suppliers were wrong. He put out some great numbers. Like I was 100% convinced it was going to be red. Ended up being purple, of course. We did hit on, our biggest bet was Chiefs to cover. We like the under as well. So we did okay. We redeemed ourselves after a legitimately horrific showing last year. When we went exclusively with like long shot bets, we're like, all right, all we got to do is like hit one of these and then we're guaranteed to win. So we're picking stuff that's like 50-1. And I think we went like 1 for 10. But it was a weird game, right? I mean, especially the first half. And we're not here to break down the Super Bowl, but if you took like any sort of over for just about anybody but Jawan Jennings in the first half, you're like, all right, we're completely sunk.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a slow first half, kind of a dud. But then, you get an overtime, so at least things get ramped up a little bit, and ends up being obviously a fun Super Bowl.
It was fun and memorable, as always. But we are not here to talk about the Super Bowl. You can catch more of that on SiriusXM Fantasy. I'll be with Jim Coventry and Alan Soslowski all week. Our guy Jeff Erickson's out at the FSGA conference in Vegas. So Jeff will be having a good time there. But we'll be talking Super Bowl, looking ahead to next year's NFL season, 7 to 9 p.m. Central on SiriusXM Fantasy. Big waiver wire weekend, Alex. We kind of primed the pump for this last week. And I think you called this one of, if not the biggest waiver period of the entire year. So who were your targets? Who did you end up getting? Obviously the Super Bowl taking place while waivers run in a lot of leagues, I feel like maybe leads to some confusion, some people maybe forgetting to put those claims in. I went sicko mode in the stake league, but I'll let you, tell me which players you were targeting first.
The stake league's kind of a different story, 16 team league. And the deadline wasn't insane. So you went sicko mode. Yes. But there weren't a lot of I feel like moves that you absolutely had to do. I was cool targeting guys for the Jazz too, the Jazz they moved out Fontecchio, they moved out Kelly Olynyk. There's like a Taylor Hendricks thing. Keyonte George might get back in the rotation a little bit. So that's at least one spot where I was like, this is pretty intriguing for like a 16 teamer to see what happens here.
I will say there weren't a ton of, everybody in the league is going to be bidding on this player type of situations, right? I think you had to work the margins a bit more. I mean, if you're in a 10-team league or a 12-team league, I don't even know if there's anybody that you're necessarily rushing out to get. Maybe you're swapping out a streaming spot or your final roster spot if you have some injuries. But when you're in a 16-teamer like the RotoWire Stake League, it's reasonable to be excited to land someone like Tre Mann out of Charlotte.
Yeah,
as I was probably overpaid a little bit, but we're getting to the end of the year. I don't really want to leave any fab on the table. I think I paid $4 or $5 for him out of $100 budget. I ended up getting Caleb Martin as well. We got the Jimmy Butler, leave of absence news yesterday morning. We now know that he's going to miss all their games until the All-Star break. My guess is that Butler will probably be back after the break, but we'll see. I mean, Martin's still been a staple in that rotation, even when Butler is out, but he played well in Butler's absence yesterday. Went out and grabbed, you mentioned the Jazz, Kris Dunn. And he was kind of, I wouldn't say a hero at the end of last year, but he was somebody that I wish I would have been more aggressive on. I'm not going to get beat twice on the same guy. Blocks and steals specifically are two categories that I'm targeting in that league. He provides assists as well. I'm basically punting assists at this point, so that doesn't really matter. But really after the steals, and Utah is one of only a handful of teams that has 3 games this week. So I particularly wanted to get Dunn in the lineup, try to get a leg up on some guys that have a lot of 2-game weeks or even a 1-game week. But yeah, Mann, Martin, Kris, Dunn, those are my big 3. I did see Fontecchio was dropped in the stake league by our good friend Kieran, who's doing better than me in the league. So I'm not going to tell him what to do. But that was surprising to me. I think I would be holding Fontecchio right now or trying to acquire him.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he took 19 shots a couple days ago in the game against the Clippers, that's a lot of shots for Simone Fontecchio. I understand why you would be nervous maybe to hang on to him or want to explore other options. It's just it's a tough game to drop him after. I'm not sure I would have done it, but I don't know. I mean, the rotation is not the easiest thing in the world to figure out. Like, I feel like there's a chance, he plays 32 minutes off the bench. I don't know. Like when Ausar Thompson maybe starts playing more minutes, and then because at some point Fontecchio's 28, right? Like he's not like a development priority.
But do the Pistons know that? I don't know that they do.
This is something that we have talked about. And the thing is, something important to note, Isaiah Stewart has been out. So what happens when Stewart comes back, I think is worth mentioning.
Well, and Quentin Grimes, who they got from the Knicks at the deadline, also is yet to play. He's been dealing with a knee injury. Not quite as much positional overlap there, but Detroit's kind of throwing things at the wall with their rotations anyway. So I do think Quentin Grimes being out there definitely doesn't help Fontecchio's case. Ausar Thompson's now started 3 games in a row. We talked about him as somebody who could kind of retake off post deadline. I went hard on Amen Thompson props for that Sacramento game last week. I think that was like Wednesday or Thursday. Bogdanovich was out. I'm like, all right, this is the night. He had 4 fouls in 9 minutes and only ended up playing 27 minutes. I think I had his block steals over in that game. Portland, kind of a similar story, picked up 4 fouls really early. Still has played, though, 27, 27, 28, 27 minutes over the last 4 games. I think we'll take that. Ideally, you'd like him to be, he was in the high 30s for a while, if you go all the way back to early November when he was bursting onto the scene. But he also had a stretch, through December and much of January where you were just thrilled if he got to 18 to 20 minutes. So I think we're moving in the right direction on Ausar. But yeah, the Pistons remain a mess. I will ask, did you consider going out and throwing any claims in on Micic in Charlotte, who had a nice game over the weekend against Memphis, 18 points, 9 assists, somebody who I don't think he came over from Europe thinking, you know what, I'm going to finish out this year for whatever they are now, like the 10-win Charlotte Hornets.
He was, unfortunately for him, banished to Charlotte along with Grant Williams and Seth Curry.
Yeah.
I honestly did not consider it because there's a chance that, yes, this would happen. He would play like 25, 30 minutes in this game, while guys are out, trades are pending, whatever. But I have way more faith in like Tre Mann because once LaMelo comes back, I think Micic is the guy who takes the fall because the Hornets are just done. Like Charlotte's 11-41.
Yeah.
You're only giving minutes to Micic as like just to not be mean to the guy. Like I don't, just to like let him get out there. So maybe they'll drop him. Would it surprise you if they just like released him?
Maybe.
I guess he's on a 3-year. He's on a 3-year, $23 million deal. So I don't know if they get rid of him during the summer.
I don't think he came over thinking, all right, I'm going to join a good team. I'm going to be in a good situation. I'm going to provide, backup point guard minutes. And it just didn't work out in OKC. I would be surprised if they outright drop him. That would almost be a showing of goodwill more than anything, to try to get him to a contender. I don't know if he's really earned that. I don't know what his reputation is, playing a half year in the NBA. But we have a question here. He says, should I add Micic or Tre Mann? This is from A1. I think we're both on team Tre Mann for now. I think there's they went out and got Tre Mann, right? Obviously that was part of the Gordon Hayward deal, but I'm not certain that OKC was like trying to get off of Tre Mann. I think that was like a semi-legitimate asset that you have to give up to get someone like Gordon Hayward. And, obviously Mann was kind of marginalized. There's a bunch of younger players in OKC who weren't really seeing minutes and, hadn't really been a part of the rotation since early in the year. And even that might be generous. So it's not like this is a lock by any means, but dude, I don't know when LaMelo Ball is coming back. I don't know if LaMelo Ball is coming back. We should have an answer hopefully during or shortly after the All-Star break. Obviously, if LaMelo's back in the mix and playing 38 minutes a night, Tre Mann's going to have a tough time, but I'm pretty comfortable holding him especially in deeper leagues, probably only in deeper leagues, to be honest, until LaMelo comes back, because I think he's going to play minutes. He's going to put shots up. He had 9 assists in 27 minutes in his debut. Didn't shoot the ball well. You're like, okay, 9 points, whatever. He was 1 of 5 from 3. He's a good 3-point shooter. So I think there actually is something there with Mann.
I think there's something there. A little undersized, but can play shooting guard if he has to. And yeah, I think again, I really, it's really tough to evaluate how they're going to approach Micic. Micic hasn't been a great fantasy player either. It's not like he's like been someone who, oh, we just need more minutes from Micic. We just need 20 minutes from Micic and it'll be interesting. Not really. He's like, someone who's averaging, I think it's 0.7 fantasy points per game or per minute, which is horrible. So that's something to keep in mind. He had a great game, obviously, but Mann's got to be the priority.
Micic, Fontecchio, and Mann were the 3 most added players in Yahoo leagues as of yesterday. So obviously they're going to be popular. A bunch of people went out and picked up Grant Williams as well. I'm not super high on Grant Williams. Obviously, Charlotte cleared out a little bit of room in that front court. He looked good. I mean, 15 and 8 in his debut, played 32 minutes. That was also a great matchup against Memphis. I think we're going to need a few more games to see exactly how that front court shapes up, because obviously Brandon Miller and Miles Bridges, those guys are going to play big minutes every night the rest of the way. They still have Nick Richards. I like Grant Williams a lot more now than I did at the end of his Dallas run, when you just couldn't really hold him in any league. But I'm still pretty skeptical that he's somebody I would really be comfortable starting most weeks going forward.
Yeah, I mean, he is only worth starting, honestly, at this point when he gets like stupid hot from 3, because he can't create for himself or for other people. He's a solid defender, but he's not like a steals or blocks guy. The only time he held fantasy value all season was like the first 10 games of the year, when he was shooting crazy hot from 3, and I was begging everybody to drop him. Like, yeah, maybe he'll take more shots with Charlotte, but maybe some more rebounds here and there. I don't know. I don't think he'll be a 12-team must roster guy by any stretch.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Looking at some of the other ads in the stake league this week, there was a pretty decent amount of movement. I ended up parting ways with guys like Sam Merrill, who I was, 16-team league, just trying to get some 3-pointers. He had been on a nice run, but I think that's probably coming to an end. Jared Vanderbilt, who's injured. Somebody dropped Tim Hardaway in order to pick up Taylor Hendricks. That was the league leader, Ryan Poole. So he's got a little bit of leeway there. I think if you're, somebody who's maybe toward the middle of the pack, or you're trying to climb, maybe you don't take a risk like that. But I certainly understand the appeal with Taylor Hendricks. I ended up dropping Derek Jones in order to pick up Caleb Martin. But overall, like I said, there's not like the one league winner guy who everybody in your league is kind of targeting. I think people have their tastes and preferences, and at this point, if you're in a category league, you're doing a lot of category watching, right? You know what categories you need, what categories you're trailing in to the point that it might not matter. The stake league specifically, you just want to finish in the top half. Obviously, it'd be great to win the league, but it's a bottom half of the league buys a steak dinner for the top half of the league. We're talking $300+. So there's significant money on the line here. And as somebody who's hanging around that middle zone, I'm targeting specific categories and looking where I can climb up, and that's where Caleb Martin and Kris Dunn specifically come in, and even Tre Mann, I view as a steals producer. Did you do anything in your NFBKC or any other big time leagues you're in?
No, not much, to be honest. I just didn't have a lot of faith in any of these guys to be worth like dropping some of the guys I already have. To me, there were no like ads that were so obvious, that I needed to do something major. No.
I haven't done it yet. I have LaMelo in that league, and obviously it's just thinking me. I mean, he's played 22 games, I think, on the year. You're just not going to compete in a league like that when your 13th overall pick is giving you that. I'm still not dropping him quite yet. I mean, honestly, at this point, I probably should, but it's like a league like that. It's so unappealing to be like, all right, I'm dropping a LaMelo Ball to go pick up Kris Dunn. There's not some sort of miracle worker out there on the waiver wire. Let's hit a couple of the listener questions out. So we can kind of mix these in as we go. As always, stack those up in the chat, guys. We will hit as many, if not all of them, as we can before we head out. I do want to talk about the rookie class at some point, so we'll get back to that in a bit. But Dr. D 314 says Wendell Carter Jr. is on waivers in his league. Should I add him? It's a 14-team points league. He says Santi Aldama or Josh Green would be the drops in order to pick up Wendell Carter.
Yeah, we all kind of got excited when Wendell Carter came back and had like an amazing 6 games, and then he turned back into Wendell Carter for basically over the past 8, averaging 11 and 6 with 0.3 blocks over the past 8 games. Not great. So would you pick, should you drop potentially Aldama or Josh Green to pick him up? I think it would probably be okay to drop Josh Green. I'm not really a Josh Green guy. He's been hot shooting lately. When that normalizes a bit and the Mavericks get healthier, I think his usage goes down.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure I would drop Aldama either, the way the Grizzlies are going with all the injury woes they're dealing with. So I don't think you have to pick up Wendell Carter Jr.
I think Green versus Carter Jr. to me is close. It comes down to positional preferences. Do you need a big man? Do you need more help at center / forward if he's eligible there in your league? In that case, I would lean Wendell Carter. I'm with you. I mean, Josh Green shot like 60% from the field over that nice 5-game run he was on. Came back down to earth against OKC in that blowout win the other night, 6 points in 27 minutes. I do think Wendell Carter is going to be more dependable than Josh Green, but I think I'd prefer Aldama right now, especially with Xavier Tillman now in Boston. You know, the Grizzlies shuffled a bunch of pieces. I'm not really sure how meaningful any of that was. And the biggest indicator, though, is that he's starting with Jaren Jackson. And Jackson's been in and out, over the last few games. But the games that he has played, he has started with Aldama. Aldama's got double-digit scoring in 8 of his last 9. He's averaging about 12, 6, and 3 with some threes, 2.5 threes per game in that span. Not setting the world on fire, but I think I would prefer him. I think it's going to be a little more secure than Wendell Carter. All right, A1 says, is Chris Paul worth an ad? His return is 222. Yeah, I think we see Chris Paul probably after the All-Star break. The last update we got was about a week ago. They said he's making progress. Still, was kind of nursing that broken hand. I'd be very, very surprised if he comes back. They play tonight at Utah. He's not going to play in that game. Then they have a back-to-back Wednesday, Thursday. Very likely to me that he's back either right after the All-Star break or sometime this month. The question is he worth an ad?
I think so. On the season, he's ranked 111th, 8 cap per game. So sure, I mean, go ahead and pick him up, especially if you need assists. But I wouldn't consider him a must-add blanket statement. It kind of depends. I think he's fine to add in a points league. 100% you should add him if you need assists.
Yeah.
If you don't need assists, he's not someone you have to grab.
All right. Our pal Matt, who always gives us good questions on this stream, he says, hey guys, would you drop Dillon Brooks and Marvin Bagley to pick up Ausar Thompson? He's in a head-to-head points league on Yahoo. Bagley is in his IR spot, so he would need to drop him in addition to Dillon Brooks to pick up Ausar Thompson.
I'm not really a Dillon Brooks guy for fantasy. I think he's always been overrated in fantasy. Marvin Bagley should have the clear runway to just be Washington's starting center. And he returned from injury after a 4-game absence, played only 15 minutes, which is, to me, you don't have to worry about that. I think they'll just ramp him up. But I mean, in 13 starts this season, including, actually, we'll just exclude this past one. He's averaging 15 and 7, 56% from the field, good in points leagues. Yeah, I would have Bagley. Okay. But Ausar, I don't know. Ausar is the riskiest. Ausar is the risk reward play. So I think Bagley is actually, I can't believe I'm saying this. I think Marvin Bagley is the safest of these options.
Okay, so you're saying if a scenario unfolds where you could keep Bagley but drop Brooks for Ausar, you would consider that?
Yeah, I would do that.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'm with you there. I mean, in a points league, it's a little bit different. Obviously some of the defensive stats, the steals and the blocks with Ausar mean a ton in category leagues, but still have value in points. I just can't see them burying Ausar Thompson. I mean, really, like the foul trouble is almost what concerns me more than anything, and that's been more of a recent thing. It's not like he has this crazy track record of picking up fouls. Early in the year, it was a bit of an issue, but he got it smoothed out. But yeah, I mean, I think the lesson is don't read too much into this last game by Bagley. Coming off of an injury, should have been a decent matchup against Philly, but I think you're right to point out that there is literally no competition for center now in Washington.
Rashawn Holmes didn't play. He was a DNP.
Right. He was active.
CD. Yeah, he was active and didn't play. So that to me points to Marvin Bagley 30 minutes a game probably from here on out.
Yeah. All right, follow up from A1. I said, thanks for the advice. Appreciate the question. 9-cat 12 team. Should he drop Dosunmu for Keyonte George? He said he's already good in rebounds, field goal percentage, blocks, and steals. He is in need of assists and points. So it's basically, who do you prefer going forward, Dosunmu or Keyonte George?
If you need assists and points, I would probably go with Keyonte George, just because for Chicago, Dosunmu is not a great passer anyway, and they have Coby White and DeMar DeRozan going to be handling the vast majority of playmaking there. The Jazz, they traded away 2 key rotation players. I think they're 100% fine pulling the plug a little bit, giving more minutes to Keyonte, who is more of a sort of traditional point guard than Dosunmu.
For me, this comes down to which of those 2 categories do you want more? Because I think Dosunmu is going to give you more points. I think he's going to give you more reliable points. He's going to give you a higher scoring ceiling, but he's going to give you fewer assists. Like Keyonte George is the guy. If assists is the category that you need to make the most hay in, go Keyonte George. If you think it's points, Dosunmu. I think they'll be really comparable going forward. And I would say Dosunmu, like if you're just saying, independent of categories, who would you rather have? I would say Dosunmu. But if you're not worried about the field goal percentage and you're not worried about like turnovers and whatnot with Keyonte George, then that makes this a tougher question. But Keyonte George for assists, Dosunmu for points. I'll give you the tiebreaker on George, Alex, if we need both. Manila's most wanted brings up some news we got on Dyson Daniels about an hour ago. He's got a meniscus tear, out indefinitely. Will likely miss at least a month. Obviously, the All-Star break helps minimize the total games missed, but still a pretty big blow for a guy who's playing around 20 minutes a night. This does open some things up fantasy-wise, though, for a team that has been a little frustrating because they have a lot of guys that we like and a lot of guys who are playing fewer minutes because they have so many guys. So who do we pick up here? He says Trey Murphy or Herb Jones. They're both available in his league.
I would go Trey Murphy. I mean, Murphy, he's been kind of hot and cold, coming back from the knee injury, but his minutes being down is the main concern, I think, for Murphy. So I think his minutes could increase. And I think he has more upside than Jones because Jones not a very good offensive player.
I wrote about Herb Jones on our site last week as somebody who I was, comfortable dropping for the right ad at the deadline. Since then, he's strung together like 3 of his best games in the last 2 months, which is usually how that goes when you write about a player who you're saying people should drop. He's got 5 steals in the last 2 games. Prior to that, though, I mean, the steals and blocks, like that's what you're after with Herb Jones, right? I mean, he'll give you some threes, he shoots a good percentage, but he's got to be giving you, close to, if not more than like 2 combined blocks and steals per game. And he was at 1.1 combined steals and blocks over a 25 game sample from mid-December until early February. So he's been better lately. He'll see more minutes. If it's a category league and you really need defensive stats, you could justify Herb Jones. But to me, if you're kind of looking at this independently, you're taking that out of it, I would go Trey Murphy.
I will say, I think there's also a strong chance that the minutes get distributed so evenly between like 4 different guys that it almost doesn't matter. Like this could be a situation because Daniel's been playing about 20 minutes, right? So this could be like 4 more minutes to Trey Murphy and 3 more to Herb Jones and 5 more to Jordan Hawkins. And, we'll give Alvarado another 2 minutes and it could just end up being nobody.
Yeah, you're totally right. Both guys, Murphy and Jones, played elevated minutes against Portland. Both played well. So I don't really know if you can go wrong here, but I would go Murphy. I think he has more upside. All right, follow up on Herb Jones from Christian. He says, should I drop Herb Jones to pick up Tim Hardaway Jr., who we mentioned was dropped in the stake league, and it's a 16-team league, so that doesn't mean nothing. I mean, Hardaway is basically threes and points, right? If you're in a category league. So as always, depends what you need. If you need defensive stats, go Herb Jones. If you just want the points, threes, Hardaway's been rebounding the ball pretty well as well for a Dallas team that has not rebounded well, although they should remedy that with the moves that they made at the deadline. This is a tough one for me. I mean, I still think I want the splash upside of Hardaway. Field goal percentage is another thing. If you're in a category league, Jones is gonna help you a lot more there. But he's also not capable of going off for 32, 41, 36 point games like Hardaway has in the last month.
If I'm in a points league, I want Hardaway. If I'm in a category league, it just depends on what you need. If you need defense, Herb Jones. If you need offense, Tim Hardaway. It's almost just that simple.
Mm-hmm. All right, James says, in light of the Jimmy Butler news, again, he is sidelined indefinitely, dealing with a personal matter. They're calling it a leave of absence. Again, I think we expect him to likely be back sometime shortly after the deadline. So I don't think this is, like a gold mine type of pickup here. But if you're looking at this week, Jaquez or Caleb Martin, who would you pick up in Miami?
This is an interesting question because we also have Josh Richardson out for a few weeks. And we have Terry Rozier, who is we're waiting on MRI results for a knee injury. So, look, I like Jaquez more. I think he's the better player. But what we're talking about is also, in addition to Butler being out, injuries to two guards. And they don't really have backups there. So, besides Caleb Martin, who is not really a point guard, but it's like someone's going to have to play there. So, I think Caleb Martin's the safer pickup. And Jaquez hasn't played that well lately, to be honest.
Ever since the injury, he's just been a little slow.
So I'm going to lean Martin here.
I would lean Martin as well. I think he's a little bit closer to a guard than Jaquez is, although I think both guys by default will see more minutes. You wonder, is Jaquez, is he focused on the dunk contest, not focused on fantasy producing? Who knows? Caleb Martin, 13 games this year when he's played at least 30 minutes, 15.5 points, 6.5 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal and block combined, 50% from the field, 42% from three. So, I mean, that's probably in line with if you isolate, Jaquez's best stretch, but that came much earlier in the year. I would go Caleb Martin. It's close. Certainly a month ago, I would have said Jaquez, no question. But like you said, he hasn't played that well over the last couple of weeks. So especially if you're looking at short term this week, I would go Caleb Martin. And the Rozier thing is interesting, man. I'm glad you brought that up. Kind of slipped my mind. I mean, who knows? That could go any direction, right? I mean, I think it's very possible that he doesn't play this week and perhaps beyond the break.
Yeah, and he had just started to play better too. So it is kind of it's unfortunate for people who have been fantasy. And it's especially worse because the Josh Richardson. So you get kind of it's doubly bad. Who knows? We could see more like Duncan Robinson as well. I think just the main point is like the Heat have more options on the wing to make up for Butler's absence that they do in the backcourt for the double absences to Rozier and Josh Richardson.
All right, we got a streaming question from Dennis. He says, pick up Tre Mann or stream Malik Beasley for the next 3 games. And this gives us a good excuse to talk about the schedule for this week. Like we mentioned at the top, OKC is the only team in the NBA with 1 game this week. So thankfully, Tre Mann doesn't play for OKC anymore, so you don't have to worry about that. The vast majority of the NBA, that is, I think 24 teams, have 2 games. And then we have Utah, Minnesota, Milwaukee, Memphis, and Golden State. Those teams play 3. All those teams are in action on Thursday. So that's the common thread there. So you're getting 3 games out of Malik Beasley this week, or you're picking up Tre Mann, who has 2 games, and you're presumably holding him a bit longer than you might Malik Beasley.
I'm picking up Tre Mann. Malik Beasley is you pick him up to stream him, then you drop him immediately. I want the potential upside of Tre Mann. Like you can look in. I don't know if you're asking this because Beasley's hot lately. Like Beasley's averaging 16 points over the past 4 games. You can go through Beasley's game logs, look at any stretch, like 5-game stretch where he's making his threes, and then look at the following 5 games. It's like he'll average 16 points and then he'll average 7 points.
Yeah, and
it's just I think you just want the upside of Mann because we talked about at the beginning of the show, LaMelo. Who knows when or if he's coming back, and even if he does, I think Tre Mann could still see 25+ minutes and.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up what you did with Beasley because I wanted to to read off, it's basically, you're targeting threes with Beasley, right? So here's his last 9 games, made threes. 1, 1, 1, 1, 3, 4, 6, 0. Went 0 for 9 against Minnesota, and then 7 against Charlotte in their last game. So you're playing roulette there, right? You got 3 games. So chances are he's hitting 4 or 5 threes in one of those games. Chances are he's hitting 1 or 0 in another, and then maybe 2 or 3. So if you really need threes, if you're in a category league, totally justifiable to stream Beasley, because 3 games this week is an advantage. It's a huge advantage, more than it is in other weeks. But if you're looking more long-term, then Tre Mann is your guy. All right, we got a trade question. Manila's Most Wanted says, my Markkanen and DiVincenzo for Devin Booker. Would this be too much of an overpay? It's a category league.
That's interesting. I mean, Markkanen is, there's a chance Markkanen's rated higher than Booker, is there? I mean, Markkanen's what, 24th in 8 cat, and Booker is 15th in 8 cat. Man, the thing is, DiVincenzo is on such a crazy boost right now because of the injuries to Randle and Anunoby. Both those guys might come back, or are hopefully coming back late February, very early March. Honestly, DiVincenzo might be too hot to give up right now, because you might get another 2-3 weeks out of this. Maybe that's a best case scenario, but I think I actually might hang on to Markkanen and Booker here. It's a fair trade, I think, like in general. But yeah.
Well, I think you also look at DiVincenzo's last game against Indy on Saturday, and you're like, well, he only had 14 points. Maybe the run is over. It's like, well, he still played 39 minutes. He just didn't shoot it well. He didn't shoot it like he had been, which is unsustainable. I think we all know that. But he went 2 of 9 from 3 after going, 7 of 12, 4 of 9, 6 of 16. Like he was taking like 15 threes a game for like a 6-game stretch, which is insane. And Jalen Brunson missed a little bit of time in there too. So there are some games where it was just like 8 guys available, and you can't take a whole lot from that. But yeah, I think DiVincenzo is too good right now. And the other thing is, like, I'm not opposed to this deal per se, especially if you have concerns about, what Utah might look like later in the year.
Yeah.
But the Jazz have 3 games this week. So if you could hold off and make this deal over the break, then, maybe that might be a little more appealing. Like, I want those 3 games out of Markkanen this week before I'm dealing him. So something else to consider there. But overall, I don't think this is a wild overpay. I think this is one that both sides would really have to think about. I think chances are, if you propose it, it probably gets accepted, but I don't think it's like an instant no-brainer.
I agree. Yeah, I would just hang on to my guys.
Okay, we got a pick one of the 3 question here from Kage. He says, Zubac, Ivey, or Podziemski?
Yeah, I mean, Zubac just came back from injury, 20 minutes in back-to-back games. On the whole season, he's like just outside the top 120. So it's like, yeah, he should be rostered, but it's nothing crazy. Podziemski, man, continues to play well. I mean, we talked about Chris Paul earlier. Chris Paul coming back could cut into Podziemski's minutes. I think I like Podziemski more than Zubac in fantasy, though. Just you get the like that fringe triple double-ish upside. And then Ivey, man, Ivey's been balling. Like, Monty Williams actually trusts him. The Pistons traded away Bogdanovich, and he's taken at least 20 shots in each of the past 3 games. Ivey has. So I think I would just hang on to Ivey. I think I'd want Ivey here. I
think I want Ivey as well. I mean, last 5 games, 26 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists. Percentages are good. The turnovers, if you're in a 9-cat league, he's still turning it over a lot. So that's something you have to consider. The one pushback I would have on Ivey, Alex, is Quentin Grimes. When he comes back, how much does Ivey's role suffer?
I think Grimes is just not that good.
Okay.
I gotta be honest. I'm gonna take a stance here and just say Grimes is just not that. He's just not that good. Or else he'd be playing for. He would have played for New York if he was good, that good. Not like. And I think if he does take minutes from somebody, he's gonna be taking minutes from like Fontecchio may not play 32. Troy Brown played 19 last game. So I mean, you could find 29 minutes for Grimes, basically just like right there. Shake Milton also played 12. Muscala played 10. I think there's minutes for Grimes that can be found without taking usage really away from Ivey.
All right, Ivey's final answer then in that case. I think we litigated that one well. All right, we'll do a couple questions on Ben Mathurin here. There are two that tie together. So Shizzle09 says, would you drop Mathurin to add Dosunmu, 12-team, 11 cat league? So this is standard 9 cat plus free throws made and field goals made. And then we had a similar question regarding a couple of those same players, Mathurin, Dosunmu, or Keyonte George rest of season in a category league. So we already talked about Dosunmu versus George. If you want the points, go with the Io. If you want the assists upside, go with Keyonte George. I think I prefer Dosunmu just straight up over those two. But when we throw Mathurin into the mix, how does that change things?
Man, I wish Mathurin would just like get consistent minutes or play well for an extended stretch. I mean, he did in like late December, early January. But back-to-back games now, it's 24 minutes, 23 minutes. He was dealing with an illness, so that's something to consider. Maybe this might be a buy low point, but I think I would ultimately just rather have Dosunmu. What do you think?
I think I'd rather have Dosunmu as well. I don't think Rick Carlisle likes Ben Mathurin. I think that has been a common thread throughout this season. And at the deadline, I think one of the more obvious, like, all right, this guy's gone, this guy should step up situations was the Pacers with Buddy Hield going to Philly. And we saw Mathurin's minutes to decrease over their last couple of games, right? Like it doesn't make sense. He's one of those guys, I've said this on the pod before, where, I feel like he has like 3 minutes to prove himself when he's out there. And it's like, if he makes a mistake, he's just sitting for the next 8 minutes and he'll get another chance later on. But like, he just doesn't really have the trust right now of Rick Carlisle. And, even last year when he played really well as a rookie, he was a much better real life player than he was a fantasy player. The percentages weren't great, which is often the case for rookie guards. He gives you almost nothing on defense. He gives you almost nothing as a passer. He's an average-ish rebounder for his position. And he was also taking 6 free throws a game last year. That's been almost cut in half this season. So I would go to Sumu. I think the Bulls are just going to kind of let it fly here, and no Levine the rest of the way is what would really break the tie for me there. So, yeah, I mean, all these guys are justifiable holds, and I don't think you're going to be in like a disaster scenario with any of them, but Dosunmu is the guy that I would want there. Andy W says, hi, just joined. What's up, Andy? Thanks for watching. Says, keep up the great work. Are there any under the radar point guards to add for assists and threes in a roto league? Well, I think Charlotte would be our first place to hit up, right?
Yeah, Charlotte. I would look into Tre Mann, who we talked about earlier, who just went to Charlotte from OKC. We don't know when LaMelo Ball is coming back. Even Micic, who had a great game in his Charlotte debut. Kind of unclear what's going to happen there. I'm not 100% convinced he's going to continue seeing like 30 minutes. But if you're talking under the radar, that's certainly an option.
Yeah, I'm trying to see. Okay, Dennis Schroeder. It's like, well, he wasn't really dropped in that many leagues. He's 73% rostered. I don't think he qualifies as under the radar at this point. Yeah, I mean, so many guards give you assisted threes, right? Like these are fairly common categories for most guards. So it's mostly about finding some minutes. I mean, Marcus Sasser in Detroit is like somewhat interesting. He's, when the minutes are there, he's been really productive. He had a 17 and 11 game last week. But when Cade and Ivey are healthy and when Quentin Grimes is healthy, I think he's probably the guy that maybe falls out there. New Orleans with the Dyson Daniels injury. Again, I'm not sure there's anybody necessarily under the radar. Like I wouldn't recommend going out and grabbing Jose Alvarado. I mean, Keyonte George, who we've talked about, if you consider him under the radar, maybe that's somebody. But this is kind of one of the side effects of a relatively quiet trade deadline is we don't have these, perfect fantasy situations opening up all over the league. I think if you're paying attention, like most of these guys have already been on your radar, right? Like we're not going to say Tyus Jones, Tre Jones, like that's, we kind of know what they are at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. I think all those names you mentioned are mostly who we're looking at. Yeah. It's just, but so many of those guys are off the waiver wire. I mean, Dennis Schroeder, maybe, who knows? Yeah. It's just those are the most popular guys.
Yeah, I'm looking at Yahoo's most available players right now. I mean, Spencer Dinwiddie, maybe if you think he has a role with the Lakers. Yeah. I don't know if I quite trust that. TJ McConnell obviously is always going to be in that conversation. But again, when the minutes are there, which is a pretty big caveat for him. So yeah, hopefully those are some names that maybe are available in your league. Speaking of the Jazz, Alex says, who do you think gets more run in silly season for the Jazz, Keyonte or Dunn? I think both will actually end up playing a lot. I mean, if you're looking for a true, and I'll be honest, I don't love the term silly season, but I understand it, and it's become part of the lexicon, so we got to use it. Keyonte George is like the perfect silly season guy, right? I mean, young player, team that doesn't seem to care if they're winning. Why not throw him more minutes? Like, I love Kris Dunn. I'm still holding out hope for him from like that 2016 draft or whatever it was, but he is turning 30 in less than a month. So, I don't know if there's a whole lot invested in developing Kris Dunn.
No, I don't think so. I was going to bring up the point you did. Is Dunn's older, so there's just not as much. There's not really a development priority there.
All right, good question on DeAnthony Melton. A guy who's been injured for the most part, has not played since January 12th. Will sit out again tonight against Cleveland. The Sixers also play Wednesday against Miami. I think with the break coming up, you expect him to miss that game, and hopefully he comes back after the break. But Alex says, what are your thoughts on Melton? Will he still be getting 25-plus minutes a night, or am I better off streaming that spot?
I think he'll still be getting 25-plus a night. Yeah, I think he'll still be worth rostering in fantasy. I think he'd be a top 100 player. The healed edition is interesting for sure, but it's nothing that can't be sort of. I think they can both coexist. And Kyle Lowry's there too. We should mention, but Kyle Lowry's not that good anymore and might only get like 15 minutes a game, and may not really play every night, to be honest. And in terms of like trying to figure out what Philly's rotation is going to be, we've been seeing like, well, we should mention, I mean, Campaign has been playing minutes lately. Those are going to go away when Melton's back. KJ Martin, I could see them, I could see KJ Martin's minutes disappearing in the form of like Kelly Oubre takes his spot and then Melton gets more minutes to backfill. So that's a long answer, but I think Melton will be back.
What are we projecting for Julius Randle to come back? Manila Most Wanted says, could he be back in early March? Certainly could be. I mean, they just haven't really given us a whole lot. They said at least 2 to 3 weeks at the beginning of February. So obviously that takes us through the All-Star break. I think at best, it's not completely out of the question that, he could be back before the end of February. I don't think that's off the table given the timetable from the Knicks. But, they're kind of treading water as is. And, you look at the schedule coming out of the break. They have a winnable game at Philly. They play Boston, Detroit, New Orleans, Golden State. So it's not exactly a gauntlet coming up. Maybe they are a little bit more cautious. I think, if he's not back by the first week of March, that becomes a little concerning. So, tough to answer. We don't have any insider info on that, but early March would be my guess. Yeah, could be back sooner. I don't know. James Chan says, Caleb Martin, or I think this is Bilal Coulibaly, rest of season. Rest of season is interesting because if we're just saying the next couple of weeks, Caleb Martin for me for sure. But the Wizards are kind of a skeleton crew of a roster at this point. Coulibaly moved back to the bench for their last game Saturday against Philly. Still played okay. I just haven't really seen it with him. I know like the good games have been kind of eye popping. He's hit some threes. He took 12 threes a couple of games ago. He's putting in some defensive stats. I don't see it being super consistent because the minutes have been there. That's the thing.
Yes. I don't think we're going to see a lot of a Coulibaly unless Jordan Poole or Tyus Jones or Avdia or Kuzma basically like sit for an extended stretch, which is possible. Possible. But right now your safest bet is Caleb Martin because we know Richardson's out. Josh Richardson's out for like 3 weeks and Rozier could be out for longer. So depending on the Rozier news, it might be like Martin by a lot or it could be Martin by a little.
Another Julius Randle question. Aaron says he's in a 9-cat, 10-team league. Should I pick up Julius Randle? He's on waivers. I would say yes. I mean, especially if you're in one of those leagues that goes through game 82, like absolutely, no question. And, if you got an IR spot, you can throw him in there. I would say yes. I think I'm optimistic enough about his timeline that I don't, unless it's a shallow league, so you're probably dropping somebody of considerable substance here to pick him up. But I think it would be worth it, especially if you have a drop that you feel okay about.
You would be dropping somebody good, but there's in a 10-team league, there are a million streaming options. Like you can stream every week a lot with great players. So yeah, I'd pick them up.
All right. We got an ESPN 10-team points league. Neil P asks, should I play Coby White and Achiuwa over Heald and Reed? So I think this is for this week. I would say yes, most likely. All of those guys, I believe, have 2 games. So there's not much of a distinction there. Buddy Hield's played pretty well in Philly. They're such a skeleton crew as well right now that it's tough to know how much you should read into that. But he's 8 of 21 from 3 over the last 2 games. He's got 43 total points. He's handed out some assists. He had 4 steals against Washington on Saturday. I would definitely play Achiuwa over Paul Reed right now.
Yeah. This is Coby White and Achiuwa for me because all the games, the schedule is equal. So I would go with those guys. They've been more reliable. Their usage is more trustworthy at this point. Yeah, go with them.
Matt says, what are your thoughts on trading Kyrie for De'Aaron Fox in a points league? Fox has a better playoff schedule. I'm on board with this. They're very comparable players in points leagues. Almost the exact same fantasy point output per game. And yeah, if Fox has a better playoff schedule, I'm totally good with that.
Yep, and Kyrie has a longer history of missing games, and I not even just for like personal reasons. I mean, like Kyrie gets hurt pretty often. So yeah, the favorable schedule, everything, go with Fox.
Thoughts on Tari Eason coming back? Is he worth a pickup for the playoffs? Starting to get a little concerned about our guy Tari Eason. He has not played since New Year's Day. They're kind of just going game to game now with him. I don't think we see him before the All-Star break. He's already been ruled out tonight against the Knicks. Doubt he plays Wednesday at Memphis. At this point, I'm not sure he's worth a pickup. If you're in a 16-team league, sure. If you're in a 10 or 12-team league, I just wouldn't do it. When you're out for this long, he's going to end up missing basically 2 months. And that has allowed, Amen Thompson to play a lot more minutes, Cam Whitmore to play a lot more minutes. I don't think that just vanishes overnight once Tari Eason's back.
No, I was concerned 2 weeks ago, at least, because they're being really dodgy and vague about what this injury is. No timetable, no specificity about what the injury really is. And Eason's very good. Has top 100 upside. When he comes back, he'll probably be limited. He's got that to go through. So I don't think he's a pickup in like a standard league.
Mm-hmm. Follow up quick on the De'Aaron Fox question. He says Fox is in a big slump at the moment. Should we get worries with his lingering shoulder issue? I'm not too worried about it, to be honest. No, it's been a shooting slump for sure. But he's still producing in basically every other category just fine. It's been basically the last 3.5 games he hasn't shot it well. He had that huge game against Chicago at the beginning of the month, and ever since then the scoring's been a little bit down. So yeah, it's fair to question. The 3-point shooting started off so great. Last 10 games he's at like 30%. Still taking a bunch. To me that would imply that he's comfortable. I don't know. I'm not worried too much about that.
No, and we have the All-Star break coming up, so he'll get plenty of time to rest his shoulder. So I think he'll be fine, especially after the break.
What's up, Tristan? He says, I just got here. What did I miss? Can't recap everything, but this is archived on YouTube. We put this out as a podcast as well, so you can listen to it on Spotify, Apple Pods. We do throw the timestamps in there. Right after we finish up, we put those on YouTube. So after we finish up, go to our YouTube page like 20 minutes after, and you can skip through and find whatever you want. Kage says, can you guys see Andre Drummond getting more minutes and being worth a pickup? Lord, I hope so. That would be huge for a couple of teams where I'm holding Andre Drummond in deeper leagues. I don't know, man. Like he plays 30 minutes in back-to-back games, and he's down to 17 against Orlando. I'm still optimistic. What about you?
Yeah, I think they played him. They wanted to go with the 2 bigs for Minnesota, and then they kept it rolling against Memphis. But then he's back. Yeah, you mentioned he's back to 17 against Orlando. Could he? He could. Patrick Williams has been out. That's been obviously a big part of this.
Mm-hmm.
Patrick Williams could be back basically after the All-Star break. It's such like there's no good answer here, because if you drop him and then he starts seeing like they keep playing him more together with Vooch 24 minutes, and then it's like, well, you got to pick him up, and then if he's trapped on your bench. So I think it's mostly unlikely that he starts seeing like 28 minutes or even 24 minutes consistently, but maybe they'll throw it out as like an option once in a while because they did.
I would be. I mean, I don't think he's getting to like 28 minutes a night. I think that's off the table. But with Drummond, you just need the 22 to 24, and he's still going to be like a top 100 guy because of the volume on rebounding and some of the defensive stats. So depends how bad you need rebounding. In the league where I have him most notably, rebounds are like the top category that I'm targeting. So that's, he's more valuable to me there than other comparable players would be. But just know that you're going to have to live with those 17 minutes, 3 points, 5 rebound nights just as often as you're going to get the 20 points, 13 rebounds like he had against Memphis. All right, good question from Christopher regarding the Blazers. How about this for under the radar guards? Look to Portland, where everybody's hurt or getting shut down. He brings up Ashton Haggins, just a classic throwback name. I haven't thought about Ashton Haggins in a while. He's a big time recruit when he was at Kentucky, and then Delano Banton as well, who wound up in Portland after the deadline. I think that's a good call. We went right to Charlotte. Portland, very similar situation. Brogdon is out with tendonitis in his elbow, going to be reevaluated after the break.
What a shock, by the way.
Yeah, we couldn't. It's very possible that Brogdon just doesn't play again this year. I think the shutdown is coming for him pretty hard. I don't think they're going to shut down Scoot or Simons. I don't really see the reason for that. Both of those guys have been banged up lately, but I don't view that as long-term. So if you just look at the last couple of games, you're like, oh, Ashton Haggins, he's played 51 minutes over the last 2, didn't really do anything in those games, including a start against New Orleans on Saturday. I'm not super intrigued with him. Banton, really unique player, can have some size, just somebody that I think a lot of teams have been intrigued and fascinated with over the last couple of years. Obviously Boston was one of those. Now he's in Portland. If I had to choose between those two in a deeper league, I would say Banton, but ultimately I don't know if there's a ton here right now.
Yeah, they're not going to shut down Scoot, and I don't know if they'd shut down Simons. Brogdon just got hurt because he shot so much. I'm with you. I prefer Banton. He at least has like an NBA history. Is also intriguing on like a steals and blocks upside. He's shown some stuff. So one of those two guys, I'd pick up Banton if anybody.
I think the only scenario where they would shut down Scoot is if he's like this foot injury that's cost him the last 2 games. It's like if this is something that's like kind of legit and it's like, yeah, he could play through it, but maybe it's not the best idea. I could see that, but I don't think they would purely shut him down for like competitive purposes. I think there would have to be a true injury there. All right, Caruso or Tre Mann? Man, we are really going in on Tre Mann on this pod. A1 says he needs assists. So if you're specifically looking for assists, Alex Caruso or Tre Mann?
Well, Tre Mann probably has more assist upside, but with Caruso's just so much more of a known commodity. It's hard for me not to just say Caruso, because I think they're going to play him down the stretch. The Bulls have a legit chance of staying in the play-in. I think it's more than likely they will be in the play-in, so I think they'll continue playing their guys, and I would just rather have Caruso.
Yeah, I would lean toward that reliability too. Tre Mann could be a better fantasy player the rest of the way, or LaMelo Ball could come back in 2 weeks and everything we've said about Tre Mann is moot. So I would just lean on the known commodity in Caruso. Like you said, the Bulls, for better or for worse, they're pushing for the play-in. So I don't think they're slowing down on that anytime soon. Christian says, should I trade away Jaren Jackson Jr., worried about a shutdown? I think we've gotten this question on every single stream for the last 2 months, and rightfully so. It's a good question. If you can get comparable value, I would do it, man. I'm in the spot in a couple of leagues where I just made a big mistake. I wouldn't say reaching for Jaren Jackson, but making a point to get him, thinking, all right, I got blocks covered. This is going to be great. He's been fine. He hasn't been, the stat profile hasn't been exactly what we expected. It's been a ridiculous season injury-wise for Memphis, so I don't really fault Jaren Jackson. But yeah, the shutdown could be coming at some point. I think the question is, what is the merit for Memphis? Are they close enough that they could actually find their way into the bottom 4? Because that's probably what matters most. Portland could catch them. They're only like 2.5 up on Portland for what would be the 5th worst record. So that matters. There are some lottery implications there. I don't think they could get all the way to the bottom 4.
I don't think so, but Triple J's kind of been injury prone throughout his career too.
Yeah.
And I think they're going to look forward to next year. It's not like they're bad and they have not much to look forward to next year. They're bad and they might be like the 3rd seed in the West next year.
Right.
So I think they might try to protect him as much as possible. So yeah, I would move off of him and try to get any top 50, maybe even 60 player in return. Like if you can trade Jaren
I would start
Jackson,
with top 50.
Yeah, I mean if you can trade Jaren Jackson and someone wants to give you like, I don't know, Franz Wagner or Nick Claxton or like Jalen Johnson or something, that range, I think. Yeah. Jalen Duren, maybe. I could see someone maybe like, this is risky, but it's like you could just offer Triple J for Zion and just that maybe that just the opposing manager is also kind of in a panic and is like, oh, I don't Zion, I don't trust him. I don't.
Yeah. I mean, I think you have to know that if people are paying attention, you're going to have to pay a tax for the possibility that he's being shut down because whoever's taking him on knows that as well. So yeah, I mean, you're not getting, you're not getting Jokic for him. You kind of have to know what your boundaries are, but I would, as always, aim high first and, don't throw out an insulting offer, but I wouldn't start by, trying to get like the 80th ranked player. If it gets to that point, maybe you have to think about it, but yeah, overall, don't mind getting off of him. I think it's becoming clearer and clearer where the season's heading for Memphis. DeWood says that he's in first in his head-to-head 12-team league. He's 4 games up on second place, but 5 guys are injured, and they're big ones. Embiid, Anunoby, Clint Capella, Jimmy Butler, Cam Johnson. Should he drop any of these injured guys?
I think the only one you should consider, well, okay, you can drop Cam Johnson. Don't worry about it. Do not worry about dropping Cam Johnson. Go ahead and do it. Embiid.
Embiid's a tough one. I wouldn't drop anybody else. Cam Johnson, I'm with you. Drop him. 12-team league. You'll find somebody who's doing as well, if not better than him. So I wouldn't worry about that. Embiid's tough.
I'm going to dodge for a second. I think Capella is maybe droppable. If you absolutely need to, I think there's an argument for it.
Okay.
But, and then Embiid, yeah. I don't know, man. So I almost need more information about your league because some leagues stop early. Like if your league ends like, I don't know, March 26th or something like that. If your league ends pre-April, it probably is worth dropping him. If your league ends in April, like if it goes to the final week of the season, it's probably better to hang on just to see. But if you want to start by dropping Cam Johnson and seeing where that gets you, please go right ahead. I would also semi-endorse Capella based on who's on the waiver wire and stuff, but I don't know about Embiid yet.
This is kind of a sicko move, but would you consider floating out like an Embiid trade offer before you drop him?
Oh, okay. Well, that's a good point. Yeah, not just for Embiid, but for anybody. Like if you can make a quick trade for any of these guys, just do that instead because they're gonna get. Because someone might pick up Cam Johnson off of waivers or Capella or Embiid or anything. But yeah, for Embiid, try to trade him first, see what's out there.
Yeah, I mean, like offer him to the team that's in 5th place or something, and you're like, all right, well, I have no other path to climbing up here. And, I just hoping and praying that Embiid beats the timeline and, I get 3 weeks out of him at the end of the year. That would burn you, of course, but at least you're getting a return instead of just picking up the best option off the waiver wire. But yeah, I'm a wuss when it comes to like dropping guys like Embiid or LaMelo or Desmond Bane or whoever it is. It's like there's that fear in the back of your mind that you're gonna get burned on it later. All right, NBA J says, "Hi guys, good evening from the UK." All right, well, international flavor here. Firstly, thanks for another great show. Thank you, NBA J. Appreciate everybody listening along. Says, "I hit with Jennings in an anytime touchdown last night, which was nice, and my fantasy teams were fire." All right, we love to hear it. We love to hear it. Talking Jawan Jennings, anytime TD on the RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Pod. I wish I had invested in Jawan Jennings. There was a time last night where I'm frantically looking up, like, can I live bet Jennings to win Super Bowl MVP? It kind of felt like it was heading that way. And of course, things took a turn, but glad to hear it, man. Hopefully we're helping you out on the fantasy team side of things. But I don't think either of us were on Juwan Jennings throwing and catching a touchdown last night. That did not come up on any of the past pods. Paul says, should I hold Gigi Jackson, Tre Mann, and or Scoot Henderson, or pick up Wiggins, Podziemski, Micic, Melton, Keyonte George off waivers? 12-team league categories. So we've talked about pretty much every one of these guys individually at some point. I'm team holding Tre Mann for now, although, I mean, all these guys are pretty appealing. Even Wiggins, who we've dogged more than anybody, is starting to play better.
Wiggins is starting to play better, but I don't really want to like get it twisted and try to like convince tell people that I think he's like a top 100 player or like a must roster guy, because I don't think he is. Yeah, Gigi's been playing well, man. Like I was a skeptic, I was a hater, some might say. But he's playing fine if you don't mind a pretty drastic hit to your field goal percentage. Man, I mean, Melton out of all of these guys has the highest upside. So if you want to drop Gigi or Tre Mann to grab Melton, I think that's fine to do. But I just wish we had more info on Melton. I mean, it's a stress fracture in his lower back. So like, it's really tough. We all know he'll come back. They're taking it game by game, which is really frustrating. Like it'd be so much easier if they were like, he's out 3 weeks, but they won't tell us. So I can't, it's hard for me to give like great advice on that.
Yeah, I mean, so Scoot is probably the guy that we've talked the least about of all these on the pod. And we did just mention, he's missed 2 games. There's the possibility of a shutdown based on injury alone. They're not shutting him down if he's healthy. There's really no reason to do that. He has been playing better of late. He's been seeing a lot more minutes. That's helped. Last 4 games before the injury, 20 points, 5 assists, 5 rebounds. Shooting it better from 3 too, which is worth noting to see if that can continue. He's interesting to me. Like, if you could say, all right, he's back in the next couple of games, or he's back right after the All-Star break at worst, are you holding him over most of those other guys?
Yeah, I don't think you can drop Scoot right now. If you hung on this long or you scooped him off of waivers, this is like the exact point of the year that we were all just waiting for. Brogdon's hurt, potential shutdown for those guys. Like, yes, you mentioned with Scoot, he has a foot injury himself. I need more information on the foot injury before I just like drop Scoot, because there is potential for him to close out the year playing very well. Yeah.
We got to follow up on Bagley. Knew it was coming. Are we trusting Bagley that much? Hold or drop? You're the resident Bagley guy, Alex.
Oh yeah, here we go. Yeah, you gotta hold him. Yeah, like he missed 4 games and then played 15 minutes his first game back. So it was a back issue. Sometimes guys, they need a little time off of that. So like I guess the thing is, before he got hurt, he was only playing 24 minutes a game, but was putting up 29 fantasy points per game. And the Wizards got nothing to lose here, and he's got almost no competition. So if he keeps playing 15 minutes, yeah, drop him, because that's insane. But if he gets like, and I mean for like a week and a half, but no, I'm cool trusting him.
We'll see if Rashawn Holmes enters the mix. That to me would be the only deterrent here, because before they added him, it's like they literally had no other centers, and they would have to give minutes to Marvin Bagley unless you're starting, Kuzma or Omarui or whoever at center. If Holmes works his way into the mix, then I'm out on Bagley. If not, you kind of have to be in just based on the workload. Christopher says, Memphis reminds me of Golden State a few years ago when everybody was hurt and they ended up with a high pick and were great again next year. Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, Golden State was like 15-50, I think, that year. That was the COVID bubble season. Kind of a good year to have a down season. Didn't have to go to the bubble, didn't have to deal with any of that. Just a weird year for the league in retrospect. And obviously they bounced back in a pretty big way the next season and, won the title 2 years later. So Memphis, should be able to bounce back, right? I don't think we view this as like, it's just a blip. And if anything, it results in them, getting a high lottery pick and maybe adding another piece to that core. Van Dam says 10-team ESPN points league. I want to drop Tre Jones for GG for upside. Is this a good or a bad move?
Drop Tre Jones for GG. I think it's fine. Yeah, I think that's fine. Tre Jones isn't really a points league guy anyway. Tre Jones, he's more of a category league guy. And Gigi's actually averaging more fantasy points per minute. And they're playing roughly the same amount of minutes these days. Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. If you're couching it in the upside, then absolutely. Going back to DeWood, the question about on who to drop. He said playoffs begin in week 21, and it's a 3-round playoff. So it kind of depends how your league. I know some leagues will count this week and next week as one. This is technically week 17 in most of the leagues that operate like that I play in. So we'd be.
Yeah.
I mean, either way, we're looking at like mid-March.
Yeah, so on ESPN at least, I don't think that's necessarily what league you're in, but week 21 is March 18th through 24th. And then if you have 3 rounds, that's the 21st, the 22nd, and the 23rd, which means basically your last game of the playoffs is the 7th. Man, yeah, I would be more based on that. I'm leaning to where it's safer to hold him. But I like Nick said, I'm with Nick on this. See if you can trade him to somebody for like basically their worst 2 starters, probably. Like the worst 2 consistent starters on someone else's roster. And I think you might get someone to bite, but it's going to be borderline.
I think the big issue here is, can you win the league? Assuming this is head to head, right? Can you win the league without Embiid? Like if Embiid comes back, do you need him? Like is he the guy who's almost single-handedly carried you to number 1 in the standings because of how dominant he's been? It's like, are you getting enough upside where it's like, yeah, maybe if you make that move today, maybe that gives you enough that you're able to hang on to a top 2 seed, but are you making it through 3 weeks of head-to-head playoffs without Embiid?
Yeah, this is a really unique situation because it would be much easier if it was like just Embiid that was hurt for you. For us to be like, to give you advice in general, but the fact that you have like 5 relatively key players hurt, at some point you just need someone to play for you, and yeah, I mean you can probably get by with some streaming and do some piecemeal stuff and just but again, yeah, I don't know, man. Try to trade him.
There's no right answer here. There really isn't. All right, let's do a couple more and then we'll be out of here. We'll talk rookies on Wednesday with Brandon Kravitz. Not going to have time for that, which is fine. We've got a lot of good questions. Talked a little bit about Grant Williams earlier, but we'll hit this again. 12-team category league. Do you like Grant Williams? For me, I'm still probably out. I mean, he's in a slightly better situation in Charlotte. He's just one of those guys where you don't look at him and you're like, man, what could he be? Like, what if he just got 30 minutes? It's like he kind of is what he is. I don't think there's a whole lot of developing to be done. There's not a lot of unknown when it comes to Grant Williams. And, you look at one game that he's played with Charlotte, 15-8 with an assist the other night, hit 3 threes. That's great. That was a great matchup against Memphis. Most of the time, Charlotte's going to be completely overmatched. And he mixed in these games every now and then with the Mavs, especially early in the year. I mean, he was great, like first 2 weeks of the season. And he would still sprinkle those in once every couple of weeks. And then, there'd be like 6 bad games in a row. So I have a hard time believing that, he's just going to be a nightly 15-8 going forward. So if I have to be in or out, I'm out.
I'm going to be out. He does have 2 pretty nice matchups coming up, Indiana and Atlanta. So pick him up, see what happens. But I'm going to say I'm out partially because I wish we knew if LaMelo Ball was coming back. But part of the reason he's a low usage player in general, but it's not like going from Dallas to Charlotte. I don't think that's inherently giving him more usage because he's also stepping into a rotation that has LaMelo Ball, high usage player. Miles Bridges takes a ton of shots and Brandon Miller's been cooking. So Grant Williams is not, I don't think he's going to touch the ball that much more than he was in Dallas when everybody is healthy for Charlotte.
All right, thoughts on Kelly Olynyk and Taylor Hendricks. So we have one current Jazz, one former Jazz. I've been enamored with Hendricks, through the draft process. I really like what I saw from him. I was pretty surprised that he was just not a part of their plan, like at all, or early on. And he spent most of the year in the G League. I think at the end of the season, there's probably going to be a week where he looks really good. I would probably rather have Olynyk. I don't really trust. Like, it's still not really clear what the Jazz even want to do like they're still pretty competitive. It's not like they traded Laurie Markkanen. Like they can kind of be as good as they want. Obviously, there's a pretty defined ceiling there, but they could go one of two ways, and I'm not sure which route they're going to pick yet. I would prefer Olynyk. I think he's going to give you a much higher floor week to week.
I mean, I don't know what the Raptors are doing either.
Yeah, me neither. Good point.
But if they both played this, if they both played the same amount of minutes, I would much rather have Olynyk. And as of right now, it looks like they might play the same amount of minutes. Olynyk saw 22 minutes in his team debut, 11, 6, 3, 3, and 1. And, they traded away Thad Young. So that's 15 to 20 minutes a game right there that Thad Young was playing. Yeah, I mean, the Pergel only played 21 in this game. So I think Olynyk has risk, but he is the upside play, which is funny because everyone's going to think like Hendricks is the upside play. Olynyk is actually the upside play. But
yeah, the one thing I will say about that Cavs game on Saturday, they are down 20 going into the fourth quarter. Olynyk played the entire fourth quarter, so he had only played 10 minutes through the first three quarters. And the Cavs are just steamrolling everybody these days, so it might not be the best sample. I wouldn't be surprised if that minute split between him and Pirtle is a little more extreme going forward when they're not getting blown out. So that's something to keep in mind. But I still think, Olynyk has been a really good per minute guy for most of his career. And sometimes he's in a good situation. Sometimes he's not. It's like every other year with him. But Hendricks has basically played real minutes in like 3 games this year. It's so hard to tell. So yeah, I don't think there's ultimately going to be a massive gap, but I personally would rather have Olynyk. All right, Navon says, "What's up, bros? I'm in a sleepers league, 16-man game pick playoffs. I don't know what's going on here. Basically, my bench is Scottie Pippen, T.J. McConnell, Trey Murphy, Micic, and Zach Collins. Any good waivers to swap any of those players for?"
I don't really think McConnell is going to be doing. McConnell and
Scottie Pippen was a healthy scratch on Saturday. So
yeah,
I don't know. He's put up some decent numbers when he's been active, so I'm not totally ruling him out, but something to monitor.
Yeah, if someone's a healthy scratch, that pretty much kills it. Zach Collins has been fine. McConnell's actually been getting consistent minutes, which is nice. But yeah, I think Pippen's the move here to drop if you got a DMP CD.
Yeah. Yeah, I would not drop Murphy right now, especially in light of the Dyson Daniels injury. The rest of these guys, I think, are all justifiable. Zach Collins has just not been very good lately. McConnell, just kind of whatever else is going on in that backcourt. He's still a good per minute guy. And then Micic, we're dealing with a 1-game sample, so who knows? But there's he showed enough that I think you're at least intrigued by what he's doing. Last one, and then we're out of here. 12-team cat league. Would you trade De'Aaron Fox and Harrison Barnes for Devin Booker?
Yeah. Yes. Harrison Barnes may as well not even be a name in this trade. Like, you may as well just not. I'm just going to pretend he doesn't even exist because he's not, you don't even really have to roster him almost in any league. So, yeah, do it.
Yeah. If you look at the last couple of weeks, you'd be like, whoa, Harrison Barnes, he's been actually, no, you know what? He has. I'm backing up on this completely. He's outside of the top 200 in the last 14 days, and that includes like that wild stretch. So no, just don't even. He doesn't do anything but score every now and then. He's a bad free throw shooter. He's super inconsistent. Just really wouldn't worry about it. So I'm with you, man. You could probably drop Harrison Barnes for somebody better and just do this deal straight up. If somebody really wants Harrison Barnes, if they're from Ames, Iowa, and they're demanding Harrison Barnes, then sure, happy to include him. But I would just view this as, would you give up Fox or Booker? And yeah, I think you absolutely would. All right, last thing before we head out, did just get an update, Alex, on Terry Rozier. Shams Charania says Miami Heat guard Terry Rozier has avoided any major injury, as the MRI today showed a sprained right knee. He will be evaluated week to week, sources tell The Athletic. So no major injury. That means no torn meniscus, no torn ACL, nothing like that. That's huge. But still going to be out this week. Still could miss time after the All-Star break.
Week to week is not a phrase I like to hear.
No.
So pick up Caleb Martin. People are asking about Jaquez versus Caleb Martin. This is going to make me lean Caleb Martin more. And throw Rozier on your IR. Don't drop him because he could come back, and it's possible he comes back after the All-Star break, I suppose. But I would put a realistic timeline on like March 1st, basically knowing nothing, but just like the wording. Just think about March 1st.
So schedule-wise, Miami plays Tuesday, Wednesday this week, so 2 games. They play only Friday next week. So 1-game week coming out of the All-Star break. And then after that, they do have a 4-game week and another 4-game week after that. So keep that in mind. Jaquez, Martin, both of those guys, justifiable adds. As we mentioned earlier, Jimmy Butler, out indefinitely, probably doesn't miss too much time. And then Josh Richardson also got hurt over the weekend. So plenty of opportunity available in Miami. All right, guys, thank you for all the great questions in the stream. We love doing this every Monday. You guys make this fun for us. So keep those coming. We'll be doing these, throughout the rest of the regular season. Do some pods in the playoffs as well. Please like the video on YouTube. Subscribe to our channel. That helps us out immensely. Like I said, we'll put those timestamps in there. So if you want to listen back, you want to send it to anybody, they can click through, just kind of watch whatever parts they want. If you want to watch the full video, even better. And we also post this on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your pods. So if you want this as an audio podcast, you can find it there 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. We've got a rotating cast of hosts, always good stuff coming out of those. We'll have Dr. Ray, Steve Alexander, the Hall of Famer, hosting the pod tomorrow. I'll be with Brandon Kravitz on Wednesday. Alex will be back on Friday with Ken and Shannon. Thanks as always, guys. We'll talk to you soon.